I'm Sean Sylver, and this is Cracked Rear View. Each week, we talk with an interesting guest about the music we love through the lens of the 1990s CD Club deal. This week, I'm joined by Dan Zappulla. He's a musician, voice actor, and Grammy voter. And yes, it finally happened. We're headed for Y2K. So I'm joined this week by Dan Zappulla. He is a musician, voice actor, and I believe the only person I know who has a Grammy vote. Dan, thanks for hanging out with me on Crack Rear View. Appreciate you being here.
It is my pleasure, Mr. Sylver. I'm always happy to be with you.
So I want to get to this right away. How does one get is it a membership to the, Recording Academy?
Yes, it is technically a membership in the Recording Academy. It is my favorite story to tell because it's the most unique story I have to tell. So the Recording Academy is the organization that is behind the Grammy Awards. They are considered the premier organization in music, quote unquote.
Sure.
And so to gain membership into the Recording Academy, it took about 24 months. And in order to apply as a musician, as a creator, I had to not only submit my entire catalog, my life's work in music for their consideration out in sunny LA, but I also had to get 2 written recommendations from existing Academy members. So luckily...
Who you happen to know?
Yeah.
Wow.
So I happen to be a voice actor on a podcast called the NoSleep podcast.
Yes.
And the head composer, my buddy Brandon, who I'm very very close with, was inducted to the Academy a year or 2 before me. And so when I found out that he got in, I'm like, hey, how does one do that for a friend of yours, i.e. me? So he goes, well, you need to know a couple of folks. And he happened to know, other than himself, another one of his composer buddies who, I just happened to know very casually over the years. And so we talked to his buddy. They both wrote very nice letters, which in retrospect may or may not have been artificial intelligence. And and so we sent it off via post to the Recording Academy headquarters in LA. Now, when you do this, you don't really hear anything for a hot minute. I didn't hear anything for 13, 14 months at a bare minimum. And when you're an indie musician like myself, you're always checking your Spotify stats every day just to see if there's a spike, maybe something caught on, maybe Columbia is going to call me for a record deal on Tuesday. Who knows?
Yeah. And
so one day in January of 24, I noticed a gigantic spike of about 1,500% in my Spotify numbers. All of those listens happen to be based in sunny Los Angeles, California.
Holy cow.
Right. So the mouse on the wheel in my head started spinning. And I said, you know what? That must be it. That must be the day that they finally listened to my stuff. And then I didn't hear anything for 5.5 months. And Sean, during those 5.5 months, I said, well, it was a good try because I thought they would have let me know sooner. So June rolls around of 24, and I get an email in the middle of the day out of nowhere saying, hey, by the way, we've let you into the Recording Academy with voting privileges. Congratulations, we'll see you next year. And that was it. There was no fanfare beyond that.
Really?
I called Brandon up. I'm like, dude, they let me in. He goes, cool. And so from that point forward, from the middle of June of 24, I have been on the voting panel of the Grammy Awards.
Wow.
I will pause for questions because I'm sure you have some.
2 that come to mind, other than how this actual process works now that you're actually in.
Yeah.
Is this something where you had aspired to be a Grammy voter, like in your life, where you, because for instance, we're working off of a magazine advertisement, 12 CDs for the price of one, right? Often in other advertisements that I pulled from the 90s or 2000s, they will have, say, Grammy compilations. There are people who are way into the Grammys, do Grammy parties. Like, is that something that you were, or was this the sort of thing where, you had a friend and colleague do this and say, well, I want to do that too?
So it was never an aspiration of mine because I didn't think it was a realistic outcome. Um, I- if I'm being truthful, I had no idea what the Recording Academy was 10 years ago. It
They're going to
was
kick you out for that.
Yeah, I know, and it just to be clear, present day, I'm in love with them, so hopefully they let me stay in. Um, it's it's not ever anything that I aspired for, just because I didn't know how the Grammy voting process worked. When you're a young kid who's learning. I learned how to play the piano when I was like 4.5, and I've been in lessons. I was in lessons from 4 to 14 or something like that. It was a
Mhm.
very long trip. And when you're going through that and you're trying to write songs when you're 11 years old, which absolutely suck, you're thinking like, man, I'd love to win, like, best new album or best new artist or whatever the hell it is.
Sure,
And yeah,
sure.
because you're 11 and your head's in the clouds. But no, I never thought it was a realistic possibility. And truthfully, I wasn't ever one of those guys who, threw one of those Grammy parties or went nuts about like getting ready for the awards.
Yeah.
I I never missed the awards because it was always something I wanted to be but never could. I just never had the in. But n- now that I'm there, man, does it give you credibility. It's quite a notch in the belt. You go overnight from being that 40-year-old dad who can play the guitar to being Grammy voting dad who can play the guitar, which is a huge difference.
Gr-
It's nice.
Grammy voting dad who can play the guitar and appears on a, if they have such a category for podcasts, I'm sure this will be considered in 2027. Possibly this episode in particular, although you may have to abstain from voting due to conflict of interest, right? Am I?
Well, of course. I mean,
Yeah,
I wouldn't want to stir the pot and potentially cost you a chance at glory. So I would never do that to you.
I appreciate that. How many other people have this privilege? Is there a number?
Yeah, globally it's about 13,000 folks.
13,000. Okay, so you're one in 13,000.
Yeah, and it's not just musicians either. So there's people on, the business side of music. There
Mhm.
are agents and attorneys and a whole bevy of groups of folks. The biggest perk of being a Grammy voter, obviously, is not just voting, but you get to go to the awards show.
Right.
Um, the cool part about going to that is, not just, gawking at the celebs and stuff, but you meet all the behind the scenes folks. And you get to meet all these cool people from all different walks of life who on the street you would say like, well, that person has no business being there. But once you get to talk to them and you see, what their story was. And I'll give you an example. This past February, when my wife and I went out to LA to go to the show,
Mhm.
the first folks that we met walking in the building were a lawyer from Nashville who just specializes in music copywriting. And it was his first show. He was completely overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And but he found his way there just by knowing the right folks and being good at what he does as an attorney.
Sure.
Um, and it's just a really eclectic group of folks who just mingle around. Um, I will say though, the experience of going to the Grammy Awards itself is the world's strangest fever dream. There are a lot of people don't know this. There are about 90 awards handed out each year, but there are only like 8 handed out on the actual television broadcast.
Right.
The other 80 plus are handed out across the street in the Peacock Theater in
Mhm.
LA, and it's televised on YouTube. Now, the cool part about this, Sean, is you go in there and it's open seating. So when my wife and I went for the first time a couple of years ago, we sat down inside this auditorium and there, they big to do. There's performances. Like I walked right past Bob Weir, may he rest in peace, of the
Yeah.
Grateful Dead, and
Yeah.
Casey Musgraves was walking around and all this cool stuff. And so we're sitting there and we're like a half hour into the show. and my wife drops her phone. I'm like, God, Jen, okay, fine. And it rolls under the seat of this couple in front of us. And she's like, well, do we just tap them on the shoulder? So I'm like, "Fine, I'll take care of it." So I get out of the row and I go around and I tap this gentleman on the shoulder who was wearing this big chunky cardigan. And it turns out it was Kendrick Lamar's personal DJ by the name of Mustard, who later that night took home a Grammy for Record of the Year.
Oh,
And it
good
was
for him.
oh yeah, and it was he and his girlfriend, who my wife dropped her phone underneath. And it turns out the entire show we were sitting behind Kendrick Lamar's team, like 3 feet in front of us, and we had
Wow.
no idea who they were.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of experience it is. It is. It's just wild, and you feel so out of place, my friend.
But everybody drops their phone, even Mustard.
Everybody
So
drops their phone. Everybody drops their phone.
just got to hope that you got an OtterBox or some sort of protection on there.
Oh, it's shattered.
Oh no. Oh, brutal.
At
Well,
least Mustard handed it back to me, so that was cool.
yeah, exactly. You got
Right,
what you needed.
right.
So you mentioned the like 80 awards. So
Yeah.
is this the sort of thing where if you're a Grammy voter, do you have to vote in every category? Is there a subset of categories that they expect you to cover?
So when you apply for admission, you mark yourself as kind of a specialist in a few genres. So
Mhm.
myself, I stay within the parameters of, pop, rock, kind of folk Americana, jazz, blues, and if there's any spoken word stuff, because I have obviously a secondary career in voice
Yeah.
acting. So they encourage you to, really just stay within your lane, which I kind of appreciate, because you
Yeah.
don't want a guy like me voting on, a country album or hip hop or something that I'm really not a specialist in. Even though, I do have appreciation for the music, it's not something that's really in, my vertical.
I was going to say, are we going to be discussing Faith Hill today?
We will not be discussing Faith Hill, as much as I, as much as I do appreciate her entire discography.
Mhm.
No, Faith will not be on my 54 included LPs, which which are plentiful, might I add. But no, so when you vote, they actually limit you to a certain number of categories that you
Okay.
can vote on. So they give you the big ones, the artist of the year, and album of the year, best new artist, so on and so forth. But in terms of the genre specific ones, you get stuck within like 3 or 4, maybe, I think it was this last year. So you really
Okay.
have to stick to what you're good at.
Okay. So that's cool. And also they're not asking for a huge time commitment from their voters either. You have to obviously take the time to thoughtfully process the categories that you have, but they're not saying, "Hey, run the gamut here."
Yes and no. There's actually 2 rounds that we have to vote on too. So before the official nominations come out, so let's say that, they announce the 5 or 6 noms up for album of the year.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
3 months, 4 months before that, in August or September, we all get the initial email with the first round of voting.
Okay.
And it's not just the 6 or 7 albums up for
Yeah.
album of the year that you see. There's actually about 100 plus of them.
Wow.
And yeah. And
So
so
this is a
there is a
commitment.
little work.
This
Yeah.
is a commitment,
There
yeah.
is some work. Yeah. But the cool part is that the Academy provides you with all the Spotify links, all the Amazon Music links. So
Yep.
it's not like we have to go out and, manually search this stuff out. It's right there for you if you want to sit down for, 6 straight days and listen to them all. Um, but it's a chunk of music. It's a
Yeah.
chunk of music.
Yeah. Well, switching gears here, as fascinating as I find this, I'm curious too about your voice acting career and like what the genesis of that was. Obviously, you've been at this a while now. You've attained a measure of success with that and earned some notoriety or notability, I guess, not notoriety. Those are two very different things.
Nah, they were both
Um,
accurate. It's
but yeah, what got you into that?
so I've always been an artsy kid. Obviously, I've been in music. My dad was a musician, so it's always kind of been in the bloodline a little bit. And
Mm,
I was a drama kid in high school, so it's the theater and the arts and all that has always kind of been something I've done. And after I graduated college, I kind of put it away for a number of years. I met my wife, we got married, we had a couple of kids, and it was just kind of a back burner thing. Um, but I was always an avid podcast listener because I just enjoyed the experience of it. I loved the storytelling.
Yeah.
And it was actually my wife who encouraged me. She says, you have a decent voice. You you might want to just shoot, somebody a note and see if you can do an audition for them. Now, luckily for me, sometimes it's just, right place, right time.
Mhm.
I had emailed a gentleman by the name of David Cummings, who's the showrunner
Yeah.
of the No Sleep podcast. And this is very early on in No Sleep's early days, where they were still looking for voice acting talent because it was just a very, very small operation, and not to the success that we've had since. And I sent him an email. He was gracious enough to give me a quick audition. And 2 weeks later, I was on the show, and it was
Wow.
it was really that quick.
Yeah.
And I've now been, primarily on that show for over 10 years now, which is insane. I've lost a lot of hair in that time. Uh, but thank God this is an audio-based
Hey,
podcast, Sean. Publishing the video would be a travesty.
I do believe in the theater of the mind. That has
That's
some
right.
currency to me. But as far as the hair, I mean, my science teacher in high school always used to say, "Is this cause and effect or correlation? I mean, is this
Right.
directly related to no sleep, or was this just going to be happening anyways?"
Do I wear hats because I'm bald, or am I bald because I've worn hats? And that's really the chicken and the egg argument of my life. Um,
You can ask AI, I guess.
yeah, and that's as deep as we're going to get on this podcast. Um, but no, it's been an incredible experience. No, the horror fiction genre is very strange. It has such a dedicated fan base where
Yeah.
No Sleep has been lucky to go on a number of live tours. I've performed at a handful of the live shows around the Boston area, up in Somerville and Cambridge and so on. And the fan base is just unbelievably cool. And they've been with us for God 9, 10, 11, 12 years now. So
Yeah.
it's been quite the rewarding thing I kind of backdoored myself into.
That's awesome. No, I'm fascinated with all this stuff, and I do have to ask you before we get to your 54 LPs that you've selected. When the flyer clearly says 12,
Hmm.
I've heard this interesting, I guess, theory you could say. I mean, one theory that I've tried out on previous episodes is courtesy of my neighbor Dan, who was the first guest on Cracked Review, and his theory is that if you were a kid and you owned Boys to Men 2, it doesn't matter, what background you are. You also had Green Day's Dookie. That's a major running theory on this podcast, and I'll ask you that personal question. But another theory that comes from outside of this podcast, it was developed elsewhere, is that the music that sticks with us, sticks to our ribs, and really just keeps coming up in our lives again and again and again, is not the music that maybe we got when we were 10 or 12 years old, which is the years that a lot of our guests have been picking, but the music that you listened to when you were 17. And I think we're the same age. And you
We
picked
are.
the year 2000, which I
Hmm.
have just been. I know that we're going to get to all of these years and all these wonderful offers being put forth by Columbia House and BMG Music Service, but been wondering, like, who is going to pull the trigger on that awfully tricky millennium in music. We are at the height of CD sales. Napster hasn't burned everything down yet, though we are writing about it in my high school newspaper. TRL is out front as we're moving from the kind of grunge alternative 90s into the 2000s. What draws you to this particular era?
Oh God, what doesn't? Well, let me answer your first question first about
Yeah.
your theory about Boys to Men 2 and Green Day's Dookie.
What do we got?
So
Let's try it out.
not only am I guilty as charged, I owned them on multiple media. I owned both albums on cassette and CD. So how's that?
Wow. Wow.
So
Okay. So
guilty as
you
charged.
so you are one of these people who I need to update with the newest format here. If I got it on
Oh
tape,
yeah.
it wasn't good enough. Nope, we got to go back. We got to get this on CD.
Yeah, a dork like me obsessed with audio fidelity. When I learned that there was a digital formatting upgrade, I was right there. So
It's crazy. I just saw I saw one of those, those like bar charts that you press play and like over time the bar chart updates, year by year with
Yeah,
whatever
yeah.
data it's displaying.
Yeah, on YouTube they have them. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was actually showing physical media sales as it goes. I think it was 75 to 2025. Well, I guess it wouldn't be physical media in 2025, but media sales. And obviously vinyl's out front for a while. Then you see, 8 tracks are also there. Then you see cassettes really take over in the early to mid 80s. Then CDs take over right around 90, 91. CDs had a very healthy period of time where they were out front, like 10 to 15 years. You kind of think that CDs won the format war, right? And then all of a sudden, digital downloads take over. And now digital downloads are like nothing because it's all streams.
Right. That's
So,
exactly right.
but we're right at that point where we are just about to start downloading all of this stuff to our hard drives, that and about a million other viruses.
Right, that's exactly right. And it wasn't just Napster. We had LimeWire, we had Kazaa, we
Yeah.
had and
Audio Galaxy, was that one?
Audio Galaxy, and we were just at the forefront kind of a cable modem. We were still kind of on
Hmm.
56K. We were, taking an hour plus to get a full album downloaded
Yeah,
and,
that was a commitment.
just to see who could get the full copy of Chocolate Starfish and the hot dog flavored water. And
I actually bought that at Strawberries.
oh, why did you admit that on a public forum? My goodness.
Because again, we're working it out in therapy here in Correct Review.
I'll embarrass myself just so you don't feel alone. I saw Limp Bizkit live.
Whoa.
And hold
Well, wait.
on, we're
Okay.
not at the embarrassing part yet.
Okay.
At WrestleMania 19.
Oh, you were at WrestleMania 19. So that was the one after Rock Hogan.
Yes, this was up in Seattle. This
Ah,
was
Safeco
Rock
Field, right?
Austin 3. Yes.
Okay, Rock Austin 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was kind of lapsed at that point, and
A lot of people were.
use that term
Yeah.
lovingly because I'm a big fan of the Lapsed Fan podcast. Yeah, I came back in the late 2000s. Don't ask me why.
Wow.
To wrestling. Yeah, I don't know. I think
That was
it
a
was
bad
just
time to come back,
a
Sean.
very bad time to come
Yeah.
back. Okay, so you were out in Seattle at WrestleMania 19, and you saw. So my follow up question to that was going to be
Mhm.
like, was this part of like a festival or something? You didn't buy actual tickets to see Limp Bizkit as the featured act, so you can give yourself a pass there. It's not so bad.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to say that at least half of the gate at WrestleMania was to see Limp Bizkit, but that's a personal theory.
Well, this is '03. I mean, they're a little off of their peak here. They're
They were.
about to release Behind Blue Eyes, I
Yeah,
believe.
that's exactly right. Very good.
And did they play out The Undertaker?
They did. They played him out to Roland.
So is that the one where he takes on Albert and Big Show?
It very good
And
memory, Mr. Silver.
Nathan Jones comes out to assist?
So yes, and originally it was
He was
supposed to be a
supposed to be the
tag
tag
match.
team partner,
Yes.
but he was apparently so shitty, so they
Yes.
just had him come out to assist.
That's exactly right.
I know my streak. I
I
may not
dude,
know all
listen.
of the yeah.
I have great respect for you bringing that out of the back burner right now. That was quite impressive. And I didn't just so everyone listening knows, I didn't prep him on that beforehand. That was completely like on the minute. So I'm very impressed.
I don't know. Again, just working it out in therapy here on this podcast. My
Yeah.
wrestling memory shared.
I was going to say, I hope everyone's prepared for us to spend the next 31 minutes on WrestleMania history. So,
Trying to get my Spotify streams up, Dan. I'm trying to have
that's
a
right.
1,500% increase this week. So
Well, you
thanks
have
for
to
that.
appeal to all audiences. So,
Who knows? Maybe you too, listener, are a fan of WWE.
that's right. Keep on
Um,
rolling, baby.
that album was pretty good at the time. There were some tracks that got you pumped up.
Yeah, I mean, you could feel like the era
Boiler,
of Limp
like
Bizkit was starting to fade off just a skosh, you know?
just a bit. Well, that's a very WWE thing. We get somebody who's a
Mm.
little bit past their apex. Maybe we can get them at a discount, and we'll have them sing the theme song for the show that we've got here.
Oh yeah. I mean, think of how many years they got Kid Rock on the show. So,
God.
I know.
Yeah.
Not to bring him up. But
Oh no. Hey, Dan, did you ever, as somebody, I guess, who was very into having lots of audio, did you ever bite on one of these offers? Columbia House or
Oh
BMG
God, yeah.
Music Service? You
Oh
did?
yeah.
You did this?
Oh yeah. My dad back in the day was a man of all discounts. So whenever he saw
Ah,
a 12 for one or a one, a two for whatever, he hopped all over this stuff. Oh yeah. It's actually how I got my original cassette copy of Cooley High Harmony. So, which
there
I
we
still have
go.
to this day.
Good for you. Good
Yeah,
for you. I've got my 100 cassette rack over to my left here,
very
just off
good.
camera. Still populated with a few of them actually still work. You know, man.
I wouldn't try playing them anytime soon.
No, no.
This thing's
Honestly,
just starting to dry out.
I'll tell you, Dan. I've got in my 2025 vehicle, which I had to go and purchase a new vehicle last year because my truck got struck by lightning.
Get out of here.
And yeah, sitting in my driveway, we had a lightning storm. My truck got hit. The house got hit. Everything was fine. There was no fires or much less fatalities. Just my truck was the fatality. It was completely fried by the lightning strike. So
Wow.
had to go to the dealership, get myself a new ride. I got myself a 2025, and there is no CD or cassette, obviously, because it is 2025 by this point. So I went out and got myself an aftermarket USB CD and cassette that I can plug right in. So I often take them along for the ride with me.
Two things come to mind. Number one, if only you had put the truck in the garage. Um, it- that's an off-air joke. No one's gonna get it except us. Number two, who is at fault in that accident? Do you claim God, or is it just like a clean wash? Does the insurance just take the whole thing and just say like we're not even going to blame anyone because
Yeah.
lightning is just like an act of nature?
Well, I don't know, Dan. Who got the pin when it was Shawn Michaels and God against Vince and Shane McMahon?
Okay, so interesting story about that backlash. So
No,
I'm not going to do this to you listeners. I'm not.
the insurance company gave me a good heap of money to go out and buy my next vehicle. So yes, it was all set. It was all
You know,
taken care
in in the days leading up to this, under no circumstance did I think we would ever bring up the tag match between the McMahons and Shawn Michaels and God. I'm so glad that we did, though.
You know, it's embarrassing enough to be a wrestling fan, but I'm really like trotting out the greatest hits of like stuff that I don't want to highlight when I say I'm a wrestling fan.
Listen, we're all guys that grew up like this. We're all embarrassed of it.
We've had our wrestling minute here.
Yes,
Needed to scratch that ish. You know, again, as I say frequently on this podcast, this is my podcast. I appreciate people listening. I'm going to talk about what I want to talk about. Hopefully, you stick with us for the whole way because we have just a banger of a year here
sure do, man.
with the year 2000. So yeah, kind of getting back to that and what's going on. What are you into at this time? How are you accessing and consuming music? Like, what would you characterize yourself as a year 2000 music listener?
So in 2000, I am 17 years old. I am a junior at the now defunct Savio Prep High School in East Boston, Massachusetts. Where, by the way, I came across a lovely independent band called Rozzy, but we'll get into that later. Um, so, so at this time, I am still leaning heavily on the CD format.
Mhm.
Although, since we had upgraded the internet connection in the house, I was getting into the Napsters, the Kazas, the LimeWires of the world.
Yeah.
LimeWire was really, my platform of choice. And when you're 17 years old, you don't really have a lot of cash in your pocket, right?
No.
So if there is a way to avoid paying 17.99 for a compact disc, you're going to explore the option. And that's really how I got into more of an exposure to modern music outside of FM radio.
Yeah.
Anyone under the age of 30 doesn't really understand this, but there was an era before Sirius XM where we didn't have 300 channels of audio or Amazon Music or Spotify. We were at the whim of the predecessor to the Sports Hub, Mix 98.5 or
Hmm.
Kiss 108.
Hmm.
We were at the whim of whatever the agents wanted to play on the FM dial at that point. So
Yeah.
you know, back in the 90s, we were hearing the Wallflowers 3 times an hour. We were hearing Natalie Merchant and Natalie Imbruglia and all of these singers that we heard over and over on, you know, pop adult contempo all the time. And when, you know, LimeWire became a thing, it was just kind of like it was the same time your parents got like the scramble box for cable, where you just got all the pay-per-view for free.
Just a windfall.
It was overwhelming, and
Yeah.
it was in the most wonderful way, because I finally got a chance to consume all of these different genres and all of this obscurity all at once. Now, granted, it took 3.5 weeks to download an album, but when it was there, it was just beautiful. It was Christmas morning every day.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember some like all night. My buddy had a what do you had a T1 line? Is that a
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
I feel
business
like
line.
he had yeah, so he had a T1 line at his house. I don't know why, but
He's a lucky kid.
it was fast as shit. And I remember like going over there and we would just stay up playing like PlayStation and
Mm-hmm.
just downloading and downloading and downloading and then burning CDs. Maybe that's a dorky Friday night to some out there, but we had a hell of a time. It rates as a very high memory.
I would say that most of my Friday nights now resemble that in one way or another. So I don't think that's dorky at all. I do remember though. So and again, this is in the era before Wi-Fi. So we were hardlining a lot of stuff in
Yeah.
2000. So I remember when I had finally got, I want to say it was a PlayStation 2. This might be 2001, something like that. I had actually gone to Best Buy and spent $50 of my dad's money on a 30-foot Ethernet cable, because the one modem that we had in my house was all the way across the other side of the basement. And I made sure that I had my horrible copy of MLB The Show connected via that gigantic Ethernet cable, because
Wow.
oh yeah, it was
I didn't
dedication
even
at the time.
know I had a PS2. I didn't even know you could connect that thing to the internet.
Yeah, there was an add-on that you could buy that you could plug into the back.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Mind blown.
Oh yeah.
Was it good? Like
No.
compared to gaming
No,
now?
no,
No.
no, it was
No.
terrible. No,
Okay.
the lag was really, I was inconsolable half the time.
Yeah.
It was, yeah, the lag of several seconds apiece, and when you're playing a baseball game, it was just real. It was not good,
Yeah.
really not good. But that's what we had, and we loved it. So let's get back to 2000, shall we?
Yeah.
This has always interested me as a very transitionary time in music, right? Because you had all of these artists who were really, unless they were transcendent, I feel like we had a dearth of one-hit wonders at the time. So
Hmm.
you had like your Vertical Horizons, your Fastballs, your, you know, Len, uh Lit with My Own Worst Enemy, like that era
Well,
of music.
you also had Ziploc. I mean, and with did you see actually and I'm tangenting already, but again, this is my discretion. Did you see the promo for the Eve 6 and Fastball tour this summer?
No, but I would like to attend it.
They're calling it the six pack because there's six actual songs that you know between the two bands.
I actually, I don't know that I can name more than four now that we're sitting here. Inside Out, obviously.
How about the 2001 graduation anthem, Here's to the Night?
Oh yes. Okay. Okay. Yep. Here's to the night that goes with it. Yep. Okay.
Yeah, there you
Yeah.
go. So I was a little bit of an Eve 6 fan, so I physically purchased one of their albums and have the other two downloaded. So they actually got some of my money though, because I also have seen Eve 6 in concert before.
Have you?
I have. I have. They were great. But yeah, that's I just think bands of that era owning what they are,
Hmm.
and just being like, hey, we're going out here, you're gonna know six songs. Like that's better than some bands. you know?
And think of what their goal was too. I mean, if we mentioned this before we, you know, really got into it, but the landmark for really hitting it big at the time was getting on that top 10 on TRL.
Yeah.
You know, if you cracked that top 10, man, you made it. That was a humongous achievement. So you think of a band, you know, who's more on like the punk rocky side of stuff, like a Sum 41,
Mhm.
who normally wouldn't fit in with the rest of, you know, the screaming girl crowd who was in Times Square at that show, who were there for Britney and Backstreet and NSYNC and that whole crowd. But you have Sum 41 putting out a really mainstream kind of pop grungy hit like Fat Lip
Mhm.
for the sole purpose of getting on a show like that, which I think really defines a lot of the popification of that era of music.
Yeah, and anybody who was on TRL is just burned into people's brains if you watch with any
Mm.
sort of regularity. So if you made that top 10, and even if you were hanging out in the outer reaches of that top 10 for a few weeks, that's, 15 or 20 episodes that somebody consumed, and you can still pull that song out of wherever it exists in the ether in 2026.
You have the one hit wonders over here.
Mhm.
You have the big like dominant gargantuan acts like the BSB and NSYNC and Britney and like all of the real pop darlings.
Right.
And then there's this other segment over here, which is to me the classic artists trying to go for a revival mixed with the newer artists trying to sound like them. And that's where I shove in Eric Clapton and Coldplay. Because there is really no other way for me to describe that genre. Eric Clapton, who had just, you know, had Tears in Heaven several years before, and
My Father's Eyes, right, was late
My
90s
Father's
for them, right?
Eyes,
Yeah.
and Change the World had come out a
Yep.
couple of years beforehand as well. And then you had a newer artist like Coldplay, which I believe Parachutes came out in 2000,
Yeah, around
um,
there.
which was a tremendous record, who was really kind of off the beaten path.
Mhm.
There really wasn't anything that sounded like them. That was a newer modern artist. And to their credit, they kind of stayed in their lane over there. So they kind of defined that modern like bucket over there of like of British folk artists who weren't really that offensive. So, and that is Chris Martin's career in a nutshell.
I was gonna
Uh,
say that held.
it did.
That
And you know, they really have not strayed from that whatsoever. I've seen them
no.
several times over the years. Great live show. Um, but yeah, they've never really tried to push out of that, and I give them credit for it. They are the Nickelback of successful artists. So
Nickelback not featured
no,
on this advertisement
no,
here.
they are
They
not.
haven't. Silver Side Up has not been released yet, or at least in the United States, maybe in Canada.
I you know, just to get our Nickelback plug in, because you have to plug Nickelback. I do give them a little credit. It's fun to take a dump on Nickelback, okay? But they've stuck to their guns for so many years. They've made a tremendous career for themselves. They've
Yeah.
made a lot of money, and I am here tipping my hat to Nickelback. Good for you guys. They're more successful than me. So good
We're
for
gonna
them.
we're gonna cut this audio, and this is gonna be its own social media post right there. Just
That's right.
you loving on Nickelback.
Yeah, Nickelback is awesome. Dan Zappulla. So and that is the end of my music and voice acting careers. So that's great. Very good.
So where do you want to start here on this? We've just got a mountain of choice out in front of us here. 12 CDs for
Yeah.
the price of one. This
Mm,
this BMG has kind of changed up their way of advertising. It used to be that they would have the little tiny, names of albums with like CD covers interspersed.
hmm
On this, the front of it is just all album covers. So you're seeing the bright colors of Pink's "Don't Take Me Home" album. There's Britney right there. You got Enema of the State from Blink 182. We've got some Rough Riders, one of their compilation albums. TLC's Fan Mail. It's a bevy of this era hits, and they're all in living color here. And you can send back that postcard. You can get some of them.
That's right.
On the back, there's a lot of those small print albums, a lot of classics mixed in here, a lot of
Yes.
greatest hits and stuff like that. To quote Dr. Steve Brule, you're in hog heaven if you pulled this out of a magazine somewhere. Where do you start with this, Dan? Like, what are you looking for? What are you into right now? I mean, I get the sense that you're going to have some sort of eclectic mixture here of pop, but how do you kind of parse this down? There's so many choices.
That's kind of why I chose 2002, because there's such a mix of so many different genres. And looking back at it too, so many of these artists are at their peak. Not to call this out specifically, but if you're looking at the back sheet there, Sean,
Yeah.
on the fifth column, if we're looking below the giant text in the middle, the third piece down would be aggression by the World Wrestling Federation. I hadn't noticed that until right now. I just had to call it out.
Well, that's okay. I see here Method Man is listed on that, and that's when he did the Rocks.
Yeah.
He did a song about The Rock, I guess, because I remember downloading it and having it on a hip hop mix that I made in the year 2000 off my buddy's computer. That was
Yeah,
hot. I like
it
that
was
track.
something, man. It was, yeah. What a wild time to
I
be
mean,
alive.
Method Man singing about The Rock, like
Yeah, again, when else could you get that though? You know,
nowhere
imagine that
else.
happening now. Imagine that happening now. You know,
Absolutely not.
it's just a wild time to be alive. And so since this is an audio medium, just to give everyone an idea of what we're looking at here. So we're looking at this gigantic sheet of tremendous albums, but it goes all the way from Willie Nelson, and I'm looking in the same column as Marilyn Manson, Biggie,
Yep.
the Band, Counting Crows, Everclear, Meatloaf, Rage, Nirvana. There isn't there isn't a wider range that we could possibly touch on here.
Yeah, it's a CD store, but there's no organization.
Zero. It's not even alphabetical.
Yeah,
It's just all over the
just here
place.
you go. Make your pick.
And these things even have catalog numbers, and they're not even numerically in order. Um,
Well, you gotta use the numbers when you write the
right.
selections on the postcard, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. But no, I mean, if we're looking at the first column here, the one that pops out to me is the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, which
Oh man,
was not released in 2000. It was a bit before that, but
98, I think.
it was. I think it was 98. Yeah, but you look back and just taking the late 90s, early 2000s pop conversation out of this for a second. What an all time record that is, and it always pained me that she kind of disappeared for a hot minute after that.
I
It,
mean,
you know,
that's her only. Am I correct in saying that's her only full length LP that
I
she's ever
think
released?
it was.
Right?
Yeah,
She
I think
just
it was.
she had the answer to the test, and then
I-
she was
you
just
know,
done.
and that was it. And
Yeah.
and to be honest with you, I had not seen Lauryn Hill to bring this back to a Grammys convo for a second. I hadn't seen her in person until she was a surprise performer at this year's Grammy Awards,
Wow.
which I lost my mind at
For sure.
to see her in person because she's just an absolute queen of the music industry. But yeah, so looking at even at stuff that they didn't include on this sheet here, because we had gone back and forth with a number of records here that were just so meaningful to me personally.
Hmm.
Um, there was I'm a big British rock guy. I grew up on the Beatles. One of the biggest bands of my lifetime was Oasis, and coming off of the windfall of What's the Story, Morning Glory, and Definitely
Hmm.
Maybe, and all of the stuff that they had really done in the 90s, they released possibly their, I don't know, I guess, least commercially successful record in 2000 called Standing on the Shoulder of Giants, which a lot of people have not heard, but
Yeah.
is in my top 20 albums of all time.
Really? See, I was
Oh,
gonna
yeah.
I was gonna have you sell me on this because I had Be Here Now,
Mm-hmm.
which is has some moments of genius, but is generally considered to be a mess. And I'm thinking by 2000 that American audiences at least are just kind of over Oasis. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, you had your run, but Be Here Now was just a cluster, and you're not going to get our attention anymore because we moved on to other things.
Absolutely. Yeah, and they had not only lost the American audience, Oasis had lost each other. That's when, Noel and Liam were in the middle of the throes of their family affairs, and
Mm.
and you could tell the band was a mess, but to me it was like to use kind of a Beatles parallel. It's when they kind of got the band back together to make a really cohesive record, as in like the Beatles' Abbey Road,
Yeah.
and then after that it all just went to hell. That's what this record was for Oasis. and it was like that last gasp before the entire mountain fell apart. It was really never the same after this one record.
Yeah.
They had a great lead single called "Where Did It All Go Wrong," and that to me was kind of like the last quintessential Oasis hit.
Hmm.
And then after that, it all just kind of faded away. My wife and I were actually lucky enough to go see them down in New Jersey this past summer.
Yeah, I was going to ask
Um,
if you went.
yeah, we bought last minute tickets. We drove down to MetLife, and again, not to like keep pouring gas on Oasis here, but one of the top 5 shows I've ever been to. I mean, they were
Nice.
that good,
Nice.
just that good.
So it was
Uh,
all worth it.
oh God, yeah,
It
it was great.
it's good when a band does that for you, because sometimes you build up your expectations, particularly a band who may have a thorny history or interpersonal
Yeah.
pitfalls that you got to be aware of, but when they actually deliver for you on that high price ticket and drive down to New Jersey, all good.
Oh yeah, and think of how many years of tension and expectation and build up there were to that one
Seriously.
tour.
Seriously.
I mean, there are few acts in the history of popular music that have had as much public tension as that band, and they absolutely hit a home run. Just kicked it out of the park.
Nice. You mentioned also there was another album or other albums that are not printed on here. I don't know if they were Columbia House exclusives. I mean, it didn't make it over to BMG for some reason. We've seen that a couple of times. I think Mariah Carey's on here, but for instance, in the
Hmm.
last episode, Mariah Carey had just had an album come out, and it was not on the mailer. And I know that kind of the line here. There's a great documentary that a filmmaker made a number of years ago called "The Target Shoots First,"
Hmm.
and it's about his life as an employee at Columbia House in like the early to mid '90s. And there's a line that one of the I'm assuming this woman was a manager of some sort, but they were kind of asking questions, and her line was, "We're going to post these new releases in our catalog here 3 to 6 months after they're actually released, so as not to compete with retail."
Interesting.
There's a part of me, for instance, chocolate starfish and the hot dog
The hot
flavored
dog
water,
flavored
right?
water. Yep.
So in the year 2000, I'm a BMG Music Service member, right? But I find that I need to, for whatever reason, I have to go to Strawberries and get this Limp Bizkit album
Hmm.
because it's important to me, because I can't wait for it to appear in this advertisement 3 to 6 months later. So I don't know what was exactly going on here, why for the delay, but who else was left out?
Well, okay. Now, I have come across Sean on this show, I believe, to be a credible artist. Would you say that's fair? With a modicum of okay, this guy's actually a musician.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna ruin all of that right now. Um, my biggest album from the year 2000, which
Drum roll,
to this
please.
day I adore, is "No Strings Attached" by NSYNC.
Wow. Okay.
I adore this record, Sean. It is for not any musical reason. There is no music theory going into this record. There
Mm-hmm.
is no it is for nothing more than nostalgia and vibes and good feels. The I can give it a little credibility. There are a couple of cameos on this thing that
Yep.
make it a little bit better. A little bit better, maybe a little bit less offensive, and say, "Okay, Dan, you haven't completely lost your mind." Stevie Wonder makes a cameo on this album, playing a wonderful harmonica.
Really?
He does, and
Okay.
and as Stevie does, he does a tremendous job.
Of course.
In addition, there's a tremendous ballad called "This I Promise You," written by the amazing Richard Marx,
Richard Marx.
who,
Wow.
as you know, just a tremendous songwriter.
Oh,
That guy,
incredible.
you know.
Incredible. And had a string of hits to boot.
Oh yeah, "Right Here Waiting" was the soundtrack to 1988 or whatever the hell it was,
Yeah,
something like that.
he had a song, oh, what is it called? But the music video featured like the Oakland A's were in it. Like
Oh
Dennis
God.
Eckersley's in it.
Hold on, I'm looking
Oh,
this
just
up.
it's too good. It's too good.
Take This Heart.
Yeah. Yeah,
Take This Heart.
that's probably like 90 or 91 perhaps, but
That's right.
yeah, Richard Marx had a run. and helping out NSYNC here at the
He did.
turn of the century.
He did. He wrote a tremendous ballad called "This I Promise You." Now, I can add a little background to this. So, as I said before, I grew up on the Beatles. My dad was a humongous Beatles fan. That's what
Mhm,
I was raised on. I
mhm.
learned the alphabet by my dad singing the Sesame Street version of "Let It Be," which was changed to "Letter B," and that's how I learned the alphabet. Which, looking back, was kind of cute.
I like that.
But they were the first quote unquote boy band that I loved, and I had never had a boy band experience in my lifetime because John Lennon died 3 years before I was born. I
Right.
never had that experience with an actual modern band. And so when the late 90s into 2000 craze came along with Backstreet and NSYNC and 98 Degrees and all these guys, I was like, okay, let's see what they have. And NSYNC, for whatever reason, I thought they were musically like, wow, these guys are actually pretty okay.
Mhm.
And then I saw them in concert. And I was like, yep, I am on board with these guys. They were amazing.
I feel like NSYNC was probably my favorite out of all the, I guess that ilk. I feel like if the band Five had two or three more songs as good as
Five.
"Baby When the Lights Go Out," I would have been really big
Wow.
fans of them
Wow.
because that one was
Okay.
great. "Faded" by Soul Decision,
Mm-hmm.
also a tremendous one. I don't know if you'd really call them a boy band because they seem to actually play instruments, I think.
They were more of a man group.
Yeah. BB Mac,
Loved BB
right?
Mac. Yes.
But we're talking here guys who had like one really good song, and maybe people purchased these records and maybe they found three or four or 10 really good songs. But you're telling me that No Strings, an album that I did not have, and I'm not throwing any shade here, I'm just saying I didn't
Oh yeah,
have
no.
it, but this, because the singles are indisputable, right? The
Oh
singles
yeah,
are
yeah,
indisputable,
yeah.
but the rest of the tracks, it's they're killer, not filler.
The record itself is actually non-skip.
All right.
I don't have a
All right.
single skip track
Wow.
on that record.
That is a statement.
There are so few records I can say that about. No Strings is one of them.
The only time that the term "no skips" has been used on this podcast so far is for Counting Crows, August, and Everything After.
And valid. Totally valid.
So the second use of this is for NSYNC's "No Strings Attached," which
100%.
that's gonna raise the hackles of some listeners, I'm sure. But I'm here for it. I'm
Hey,
totally
listen,
here
man.
for it.
I'm going out on that limb. I'm telling you, in the 26 years since that CD has been in my possession, not one skip in the book. Zero.
Love it, love it. All right, now where do we go from here? And I'm not talking about the filter song. Where do we go from here, Dan?
Well, Mr. Sylver, we can either embrace the fact that I just loved NSYNC, or I can jump off a cliff. It's one of the two. Um, no, it's look. There are, we could talk about this for 8 hours. We could talk about Michael Jackson's Invincible. We could hop into Oops, I Did It Again. We could we could even, if we wanted to get really really deep with this, we can even say that my favorite band, as you can see from the Rickenbacker over my shoulder, as in the
hmm
Beatles, I could say to you that in September of 2000 they had a number one record.
Oh yes, the Beatles
They
won.
Yes, they did. Which, again, no skips. Maybe
Mhm.
not to the level of NSYNC, but that was a joke. Um, you can't see it, but Sean's smiling. I swear to God, he is. Uh, no, but if we wanted to stay and just kind of like close the loop on the regular pop window here, it was a time when when TRL was reaching its peak. I would say that it's fading off by about 01, 02 or so,
Yeah.
but this was
Post
the
9/11, it would kind of,
yeah, that's a
it was
great line of demarcation. Yes.
it's kind of a weird one, but like, do you remember MTV after 9/11? Just kind of the programming was, they completely replaced their rotation of
Hmm.
videos, and the regular programming just went away for a little while.
Yeah.
And I just
Yeah.
kind of remember like that. And then when it came back, it just felt different. Right? I mean, a lot of things felt different right then, right?
Right.
But
No, it's
it really
true.
feels like culturally, it just kind of it shifted. What do you got going on around 9/11 musically? You got Jay-Z's dropping Blueprint that day.
Hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
Britney had just come out with her
Was it
third
that
album,
day
right?
he dropped that?
Yeah, because it was Tuesday as a release day, right?
Right.
So, yeah, Blueprint came out
Wow.
on September 11th. But
Wow.
I believe Britney had just came out and she had the snake at the VMAs, like the week
Yep.
before.
Yep.
Um, Michelle Branch is having a summer.
Michelle Branch, who by the way was my high school crush. She and I have
I
the exact same birthday, just to toss that out.
really now.
Yeah,
I'm sure she's still crush worthy.
I know.
Vanessa Carlton hasn't quite joined us yet, but we're we're pre Pink Misunderstood.
Yes.
But like a lot of this stuff has kind of run its course a little bit, and we're venturing into new territory of the pop revolution. I mean,
Yeah.
NSYNC's about to break up.
Yeah, and it feels like the side of the millennium turn of pop music. So this is when we got like J Lo, Destiny's Child. I think did Janet Jackson have one around then? I think that
All
she
for
did.
You.
All for You. Thank you.
I mean, she's also in the Nutty Professor soundtrack, which is on here
Yes.
with Doesn't Really Matter.
Yes. Very good. Yeah, it seems like that era of that kind of group approach to pop was starting to fade out a little bit. And the only kind of group approach after that was actual instrumentation bands. So then you had the rise of like, Incubus and
Yeah.
bands like that who were a little bit more organic than what we had seen. But it's funny that you bring that up though, that 9/11 is that kind of like musical line of demarcation with MTV. You're exactly right. And I had never thought of that before, where it's, if again to bring people into what culture felt like at that time, which is
Mm.
just so important to this conversation. um when you have MTV setting up shop in the middle of Times Square after an event of that magnitude, everything New York and everywhere else in this country just felt just a little bit depressed all of the time.
Mm.
And we weren't really in the mood to look at choreography at the time.
No,
And
no.
it kind of organically took itself out. um it's strange that because I talk about an event like that, like everyone listening knows about it, but
Mhm.
I bet you half the folks listening to this weren't even alive at the time.
Well, if you see my Spotify stats, and you as a person who admits to keeping a close eye on yours,
Mm.
I looked at this, and 88% of my audience is between the age of 35 and 59. So
Oh
there's
wow,
a
they should get to bed.
so there's a clear a demographic for this. This podcast has a type.
Well, then I'm speaking directly to their grandkids right now. So to the grandkids of the key demographic, it was a very strange time.
Yeah.
But
But hey, looking at this, I mean, we're over a year out from any of that stuff, and we're just living in the bliss of a real music boom, the last music boom.
it
You know,
it was. As I was doing my mental prep for the show, Sean, I tried to put myself, back in high school, right?
mm,
And culturally, again, not to bring 9/11 up again, but as that kind of line of before and after,
mhm,
this really was the last, happy-go-lucky period we had for a little while,
mhm.
where I don't feel like we got that era of, uninhibited pop music back till, maybe like the mid 2010s. It took a long time where we started seeing like,
Yeah,
the Keshas of the world start coming out of the woodworks. Yeah, I
yeah.
dropped
No,
Kesha. That's
that's
okay.
no. That's hey. I was a big fan of that first album. I mean, she wrote a song that describes our listeners. Dinosa. You are a dinosaur.
Wow.
Yeah, you're just an
Wow.
old man hitting on me. What? You need a CAT scan. Great lyrics.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, see, I dropped it. This is how impressive this guy is. I dropped Kesha thinking that he's going to only know, like, TikTok. And he just dropped, like, a full line of lyrics that I couldn't even drop on you.
Well,
It,
Dan, I don't expect you to, you're going to have your places here on this show where you fill in the blank. There's going to be places I'm soloing, you're soloing. And let's also be real that when I hit, and again, I mentioned that whole thing about the music of age 17 is the music that sticks with you. Also, the statistic is when you hit your mid 30s, roughly 33, that is when you really kind of ratchet down what your style is and
Mhm.
you refuse to choose it. And so 33 for me would have hit around 2016, and I really don't know much of any lyrics of anything that happened after 2016. So, yes, a Kesha track from 2010,
Hey,
wheelhouse. Maybe the back end of my wheelhouse, but still wheelhouse. I can hit
what the
that
hell?
fat pitch over the wall on MLB The Show on PlayStation 2 with a
That's right.
30-foot Ethernet cable, right?
You know, even with the lag, you're still hitting that thing
Still hitting
410.
that bomb out of there.
That's right.
But yeah, that's a great point. I mean, because yeah, we did have kind of a little poppy resurgence there for a little bit, but it took a good decade to get back to
It did.
here.
It almost feel like MTV tried to manufacture it a little bit, you know, when they had the whole Jessica Simpson and Nick Lachey thing, and they
Oh
tried
yeah,
to bring it back, you know, with the
yeah,
Newlyweds.
yeah, yeah.
Um, but yeah, we weren't ready for it for a good 10, 15 years. And maybe that's maybe that's just our generation being jaded by nature.
Well, and there's a lot of artists on here, and I mean, we describe some bands as one-hit wonders, and that's just something that happens, and we
Mm,
understand music is cyclical. But for a lot of these pop stars, it wasn't there after '01. Even if they did get a release out there, there seemed to me, and you may have a little bit more knowledge of this than I do, but it seems to me that there was a lot of music industry mergers
yeah.
around this time too,
Yep.
or slightly after this time, that wound up a lot of acts weren't getting promoted the way that they thought they were going to be promoted. A lot of acts wound up getting dropped. So some of these folks didn't even really have a follow up on their previous success. Didn't even have the
Yeah.
opportunity that maybe they thought they were going to get.
And isn't that, you know, when we talk about, you know, really defining the time in music, isn't that the biggest difference between then and now in terms of the creation side of music? Because when we're going back 25 years ago, you don't get in people's ears unless you kind of have a record deal in your
Yeah,
pocket,
right.
unless you get that FM radio time. Whereas now, a guy like me doesn't make it onto really anything. I don't get to the Grammy Awards. Sean, I'm not even talking to you. If you know Spotify doesn't exist, if I don't have the ability to produce my own music on the MacBook that I'm talking to you on right now,
Yeah.
none of this happens. So to me, the biggest difference in music between then and now is the accessibility of creative works from
Mm.
people who just want to make it, have
Hmm.
no have no strings attached to them, Sean. So I'm so sorry. But
Nicely done there. Nicely
thank you.
done there. Hey, these are dad jokes presented by dads, probably to an audience mainly of
Mainly of
dads.
dads. Yeah.
Yeah.
We know where our sugar is powdered, you know. So
So at some point here, we have to actually get to the task of
yes.
picking a dozen. And I may even allot you a baker's dozen here, Dan.
Ooh.
Yeah, I'm not going to allot you 54. I'll tell you that. We'd be here all night. Although, I'm wondering if I should have considered some sort of gimmick episode where we do like some sort of marathon stream, and it would
Oh
just be
yeah.
you and I just going.
You name the Saturday, buddy. I'll get the coffee ready. We can roll. We'll start at 6 in the morning. I don't care.
Roll
you
out of
you know
bed.
we can.
If anything, this amount of time has taught me here so far is that we definitely could.
Oh yeah. We're just getting revved up.
We do have a task here in front of us, and
Yes.
if I know anything in this age of having a skylight calendar in my kitchen where we check off the tasks of this is how this podcast works. We are joining a CD club today. It's interesting because we have not seen 12 CDs offered here. It's almost like they can see the writings on the wall, and I'm not talking about Destiny's Child, which is here in this flyer, but it was 8 CDs back in 1990. It was 10 CDs maybe in the middle of the decade. We recently uncovered an offer of 11 CDs, but 12, that is just unheard of.
It is. I mean, and think of the shipping costs. You know, at 12 CDs, that's not a light package.
No, no. I'm trying to see, do they describe the shipping costs here in the fine
I'm
print?
scrolling through myself now. Here's the thing: it says they're also available on cassette. I wonder if they try to steer you in that direction to ship it in the smaller box. Just throwing that out there.
That's true. And you know how I mentioned that bar chart, right?
Yes,
Cassettes are dying a
yes.
fast death at this time. In fact, I remember going into Strawberries, I believe in 2000 or 2001, and picking up cassettes of stuff that I did not yet have. I got like Nas Illmatic. I got
Ooh,
some great hip hop. I just remember cleaning up at Strawberries, and these cassettes were like $2. It was just like, get
huh?
them out of here.
Why not?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
amazing.
It
Oh, that's
was
amazing.
it was wonderful, but yeah, the death of the cassette is in full flux, but still apparently offered here by BMG. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Now it's funny too. When we're looking through all of these albums here, I almost feel a twinge of guilt selecting some of these that I'm going to select because I know they're not from 2000, but
well, it yes, and I'm not asking the guest to make a top 10 or top 12 list of a year, right? I feel like that gimmick has been explored in other podcasts,
right.
right? I am asking you to act in some way as your 2000 self. And yeah, you could, there's some poetic license here to, take your last 26 years of life experience and put a little bit of that into your selections. But, act as your 2000 self and tell me what you're going to pick.
All right.
So, that could be anything. Again, a music store has been unfurled before us. There is no organization to it, however. So, I have tasked you this week to go through this whole thing and figure out where your 12 is going to be.
I'm picturing myself virtually in a Sam Goody right now, and I feel you just feel a little bit happier. There's that little happy that we lost over the last 30 years, not being
Yeah.
able to walk into a store like that.
There's a record store about a half an hour from me, and it is totally worth the trip. It is
Oh yeah.
totally worth the trip to just go. Even going once in a while, it buoys me for weeks on end.
Oh yeah. It's just that little touch of adrenaline that you get. It feels like home walking into one of these places.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
That's why you mourn the loss of a Newbury Comics because you got that walking in there too.
Yeah. Before it became all Funko Pops.
I know, I know. Not to hate on Funko Pops, but
No, those are pretty cool, but yeah.
yeah, but the music was the lifeblood.
Mhm.
Um, all right, let's hop into the dozen. You want to hop in?
Let's hop into the dozen.
Okay, I can pick front and back here. Correct?
You can, if it's listed, it's
Beauty. Okay. Some of these I will explain myself, and some of them I will not. I'm going to let them stand for themselves. I've already embarrassed myself enough with the NSYNC no strings attached diatribe. We'll and it was a diatribe, sadly enough.
and I enjoyed it because
Thank you.
I may very well bring that album up and just see if that's a cuckoo bananas statement that you made there, or because I could be persuaded on this era of pop. I have several volumes of mix CDs of TRL hits. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
basically Sean Silver's version of Now That's What I Call Music
Right. Yes.
that are over here on a bookshelf. We could live La Vida Loca if necessary. So,
I,
you saying you like NSYNC's No Strings Attached, not a shocking statement to me, not a statement that, I'm going to discredit in any way.
there is going to be a sneaky big amount of people who love that album who wouldn't otherwise call it out. But I guarantee you, there are
You're
people out
brave
there
enough
who
to
love
say
that
it.
thing. I am. I'm always brave enough to be the first, Sean. That's just in my nature. Um, okay, so the first one up, first one up here, Marshall Mathers LP. It's the first one listed on the sheet. It's the first one I'm going to pick. Uh, One of Eminem's two or three really hallmark albums. You have that. You have the Slim Shady LP. I mean, there's just really some hallmark stuff. So we're gonna pick that.
Yeah, this to me is like, I think the darkest. This is as close to the edge as Eminem could get.
Yeah.
And later, if he ever tried to go there, it almost came off as, no, buddy, this is, you've already been there. You've
Yes.
already you've already touched the sun. Right, and now you must back away and do something different.
It's so funny you put it like that because in subsequent albums, it almost felt like performative trying to play the role of Eminem.
Yeah,
And he never really captured it like he did on this record the first time. It's a very, very good way to put it.
yeah, no, absolutely. I remember my one of my best friends, nicknamed Big Pun. I do see a Big Punisher album on this
Hmm.
advertisement here. I don't know if that's going to come up, but I remember he had like the box, like the kicker in the trunk of his Dodge Aries. And we would
Yeah.
just, drive to the Cape Cod Mall to, I don't know, go pick up some video games and just bump that CD with some just dark, dark shit coming out of those speakers.
Hmm. But wasn't that the best part of it though? That was the time, man. It was just we didn't know any better. So,
Yep.
you
Yep.
know, we didn't know any better.
It was, yeah, it was a place and time. And
That's right.
yeah, that won a ton of Grammys, if I recall,
Oh yeah.
also.
I did not vote on those, by the way. I think I
No.
was tad young. Um, Second row on this sheet. Again, I'm gonna go back into the pop stuff, but if this record is on here, I cannot help but pick it, and that is Britney Spears' "Baby One More Time." I cannot help but pick the record. Um, it was a '99 record,
Hmm.
but in terms of landmark albums of pop music, it's got to be in the conversation. Not really like a musical dynamo or anything, but
I wanted to ask you about this album actually. When I
yeah.
was doing my own notes, I thought, well, if this comes up, actually, in texting with a friend of mine the other day, we were talking about the real player. You remember the real player that you would
Hmm.
have on your computer?
I do.
And I remember like being in the computer lab at my high school, like in between school ending and like JV basketball practice, right?
Hmm.
And I would play the real player, and you could turn on radio stations around the country. And I think one that I always like to listen to was like Seattle's Cube 93, Kube. And that was like their pop station out there. And one day they played Britney Spears' "Baby One More Time," and I was like, "Wow, this is catchy. Like, who is this?" So went home. Like, what, we didn't have Google back then. Went home, probably went to like Yahoo search, on my 56K modem, was like, who is Britney Spears? What's "Baby One More Time?" And then probably within the week, like everybody had seen the video. But the question from this is, Britney had the benefit of the best timing out of Christina,
Yes.
Jessica Simpson, Mandy Moore.
Hmm.
If one of them comes first, is Britney still as big? I guess the question is Britney the biggest because she came first? Or is Britney the biggest just because she's Britney?
Very interesting question. So I think she's going to be biggest not because of either one of those. I think
Oh,
it's the strength of the lead single. And
yeah.
I'll tell you why. So the gentleman who wrote Baby One More Time is a gentleman by the name of Max Martin,
Yes.
Swedish songwriter who also wrote I Want It That Way
I
from the
want it that way.
Backstreet
Yep.
Boys Millennium
Hmm.
album. Now, the cool part about Max Martin and his writing style is that his English wasn't always the best. And if you actually listen to the lyricism in I Want It That Way and Baby One More Time, it doesn't make any sense. The words do not flow in any sort
Oh,
of
man.
contextual process. It's the strength of the music itself proving proving that his melodic songwriting and the beats that he put together were so good that his weak strength of the English language,
Hmm.
it didn't matter at all. I
Yeah.
Want It That Way, just if you actually read, the lyrics on a sheet of paper, it's gobbledygook. It, and same with Baby One More Time. She's asking you to hit her again. Like it's
Yep.
it's nonsense.
I was faced with a question about the lyrics of "I Want It That Way" from my 5-year-old this weekend,
Hmm.
and I don't know. There was just a pile of litter just emanating from my mouth, trying to make this make sense for a 5-year-old.
Hmm.
I don't know what I said, but I said something and she accepted it, and I was like, all right, I did it, because I don't know what Max Martin was going for here, but I know it sounds good.
Dude,
And
you
that's
know what
why we're
he's going
listening to it
for?
right now, kid.
He's going for catchy. And
Yeah.
he wrote "It's Gonna Be Me" for NSYNC, as it happens. And again, another song musically freaking brilliant,
Yes.
but the word it just doesn't make any sense. And I challenge anyone listening to this, go look up the lyrics to any of the songs we've talked about here and just read them without any musical context, and you will understand that it is the strength of the beat. To go back to Oasis just for a second,
Mhm.
Noel Gallagher said this many years ago, that he's an incredible songwriter, not because of any words that he writes down, but he can write the catchiest ish, to censor myself, that
Ah,
you've ever heard. And Elton John said that about him as well. He goes, the lad's lyrics don't make any sense, but he can write a melody. And that's why he's been successful. So
yeah.
it's all the strength of the music. It's all the strength of the music.
Well, when Elton John gives you a compliment, I guess
Right?
however backhanded that was.
Right. I know. He called him the greatest songwriter of this, era or whatever it was, and then followed it up with that. So, I'll take the compliment. It's still Elton. Okay, so that's two. I feel like we're going to talk for an hour about each one of these. Um, Third one, same row, two over here. The best of Eric Clapton Chronicles.
Okay.
Okay, obviously not, an all 2000s album, but if you're having an Eric Clapton best of collection on here, I'm putting it in my collection because it's Eric Clapton, and I'd be foolish not to.
It's wild. We've talked about this before on the podcast too. I don't think it's a trend necessarily, but greatest hits albums
Yes.
are just such a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, there's landmark greatest hits albums like Eagles, for
Eagles,
instance.
right?
One of the great sellers of all time, I guess that everybody has. But Clapton, interestingly, and I think I had this tape at one point. He had a compilation called like "The Cream of Clapton" that had just
Mm-hmm.
came out a few years earlier. So we've got another one, and we hadn't even entered that era where I'm not sure what record company or whatever did these, but there was like a spate of best of albums from like 2002 on where it just seemed like everybody who was anybody got, and they all had the same font. Do you know
Yep.
what I'm talking
Yeah.
about now?
Yes, they sure do.
Like,
And
I don't know who published those, but there's just a ton of those. And we haven't even hit that point where, early 2000s, they're trying to sell us all of these, hunks of plastic.
yeah, and it was. I think part of it too was trying to advance the physical media sales to a certain point,
Mm,
because you had these older artists who were really just trying to make the comeback with that greatest hits compilation, and to a certain extent, the Eagles had kicked it off, but then you saw the success of the Beatles one in 2000,
yep.
and now granted, not every artist has the back catalog that the Beatles
No.
do. Few do, but even on this sheet alone that we're looking at, we have Clapton, we have Marvin Gaye. If you flip it over, there's at least 4 or 5 more on the backside.
Yeah, there's that CCR Chronicle, which is one
Right.
that a lot of people have. Tom Petty's on there, which is probably one of my favorite
Yeah,
greatest
Leonard
hits
Skinner's up
offerings.
there, Bob
Yep.
Dylan, and all these guys from the 60s and 70s, which I'm very very fond of that era of music. But just looking at this, Billy Joel and the Who, and they're all just trying to cash a check. That's all it is. Yeah,
Yep. And and
they're
and I would say Clapton got your money, but knowing
oh yeah,
what these mail order CD clubs did to skirt the royalty process,
I know.
probably didn't see much of your money from that selection.
Yeah, I mean, not that he personally needs it,
No. No.
but the principle is true.
Hmm.
That being said, from 4 on through 12, I will do my best to try not to make this a collection of greatest hits albums, because I certainly could. With look, Marvin Gaye is right below this because no one can see this, but if we're talking about Marvin Gaye and the Who and Skinner and all them, I could. This is just a dozen of greatest hits albums.
Yeah, you could
Um,
totally just make your dozen that and be totally satisfied.
oh yeah. Last one I'll do on the front, and I bet you'll be a little surprised that there are a couple I'm skipping here.
Hmm.
The last one I'll do on the front is one that I owned back in the day, which I feel was one of the great, um, more punky pop albums of the era, and that's "Enema of the State" from Blink-182. And it really kind of defined an era of harder, what I like to call MTV punk.
Hmm.
Um, and it was, not that Blink had this like slew of great albums, but when you have What's My Age Again and All the Small Things back to back on a single record, it's hard to ignore that album. So I'm putting that on there as my number 4.
I think when you take those singles and I, without actually, and I had this one too. I actually remember ordering this one from BMG and like getting it with probably like Third Eye Blind, or like I
Mhm.
remember that package coming to my house and just being so excited. I feel like this is peak Blink 182, and this is really like a perfect album of what they were trying to do. I guess that genre, if you want to call it a genre. Like you take the radio friendly signals, not sure if they were like produced by different people than all the other stuff on the album, but the filler tracks, it's more of what made Blink popular.
Right.
It's fun, it's crude, it's whatever, and then you add the radio tracks and it's 30 minutes of pure enjoyment. It's a great
Yeah,
record.
and that's all it is. And that goes back to what we were saying before of just being unencumbered listening to the music,
Yeah.
where 2 years later you just really couldn't do that.
Yeah, I mean, look at the album that had I Miss You on it.
Right,
Everything had changed by then,
exactly. Yes, exactly. And so that's my first punk intro entry rather at number 4. Flipping to the back. The Neil Diamond I'm kidding. Um I just saw it there. I was like, man, I should really put that on the list.
Coming to America, that's a jam.
Uh,
That's a jam.
Whenever I hear Neil Diamond, I cannot help but think of Will Ferrell on Saturday Night Live. And again, I'm dating myself. Um, um,
That's okay. We date ourselves here.
that's what we do. We talked about wrestling for 15 minutes. All right, so I'm putting this next one on here for, I guess, more of a cultural significance now than it
Mhm.
was then.
Mhm.
And that is Born Again from the Notorious B.I.G. This, again, a
Oh.
bit of a compilation album, but this was the first posthumous comp album that came out after Biggie was assassinated. This is kind of one of those things that was never intended to be an album, and it was just kind of put together
Yeah.
by a bunch of different guys, including like Timbaland and a bunch of different producers. I put it together now just for the significance of looking back at it, with all of the Sean Combs involvement and Lil Kim and everything that comes into the aftermath of Biggie's passing. Um, Maybe in 2000 I wouldn't have put this on there, but as a 42-year-old guy now seeing that, it's hard not to toss it in there. So
Yeah. I had this, Dan. I remember picking this up and being psyched. I remember a lot of the kids at school, bumping this in the parking lot. One thing that I think is interesting about Born Again is like Black Rob is featured on a couple of tracks, and
mm,
Black Rob had that big hit "Whoa" in 2000.
hmm
That was, you could tell like that was where Diddy was trying to steer the Bad Boy Empire next, because all right, what do we got here? Mace is going to become a minister. Like,
right.
I guess we're going
Right,
guess we're going with Black Rob,
right.
I guess Dream was out there, if you recall,
Yep.
the girl group Dream with He Loves You Not, which was a pretty good one. But yeah, Diddy taking a bunch of, why am I calling him Diddy? I mean, like, well,
Hey, listen,
uh,
but you know what? I understand.
eh,
I understand.
that's what he
He's
was for a long
intertwined,
time.
man.
Yep.
He's
It's,
intertwined.
as you said with Eminem, sometimes like the performative version of Marshall Mathers, right?
Hmm.
Sometimes it's tough to separate the performer from the person.
Yes.
And yeah, Diddy was presented on a platter to us for a number of years as this super producer of hits, and that's what he was trying to do at the time.
Speaking of Eminem, we will round out the first half dozen
Okay.
of the list here with another Eminem record, which is the Slim Shady LP, which was released in '99, but really got a lot of traction really late in that year. My Name
Yeah.
Is really took off. Guilty Conscience was huge. Just again, his early stuff is just fantastic. So it would be irresponsible of me not to put both them albums on there. So Slim Shady LP it is.
Yeah. From a critical standpoint here, from a of the moment TRL standpoint, that one rates as well.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so in the second half here, on the back nine, as it were, this is an album that, as a young acoustic guitarist, meant a lot to me back in the day. You see, Sean, every acoustic guitarist back in the late '90s and early 2000s, especially us young white guys, always idolized Dave Matthews, and
Yep.
it was part of the contract. We kind of had to. He was John Mayer before John Mayer, and Under the Table and Dreaming was one of, first of all, it's Dave Matthews' best album by far. It's one of those landmark albums in pop music where, you know, everyone was trying to sit down on their crappy six strings and learning how to play Satellite. None of us got it right. Everyone always said their left hand hurt afterwards. You know, I used to do this acoustic set with a buddy of mine along the Charles River, and it just ended up being 2 hours of Dave Matthews and John Mayer acoustic numbers, and it was just terrible. And it was it was really real bad. And it's just it's an album that meant a lot to me personally at the time. I probably haven't listened to it in 20 years, but I mean, name a bigger album, just front to back. It's not a no skip, but it's close. It's really close.
I mean, it was totally huge and a springboard for what was a very successful run for this band, you know, as a charting band, and then, you know, kind of their current incarnation as a touring band who, you know, still releases stuff and has that hardcore following. I'd also like to congratulate you for this is the third album in podcast history that has been selected more than once.
Really?
So Boys to Men 2, TLC's Crazy Sexy Cool, and now Dave Matthews Band, Under the Table and Dreaming.
Well, I'm honored to contribute to this tremendous legacy. So
every time a bell rings, an angel gets its
an
wings.
angel gets its wings. That's
every
right.
time an album is selected more than once, I got to bring it up.
That's
Great
right.
minds. Great minds.
Well, I mean, I was going to do this one later in the list, but I'll do it now because this is probably the fourth one, I'm guessing. I don't know how it is still on this list from BMG because it was released 6 years before this in the fall of 1994. But God help me, Dookie is still on the list. It is still on there. And
wow.
I didn't imagine I would need to talk about that album here on this conversation.
Yeah, it's
But here
crazy
we
that
are.
you don't have Nimrod on here.
Right? I know.
Interesting.
There's no need to but doesn't that speak to the strength of the album?
Yeah,
That
there's some
so many
stuff
years
that's
later.
definitely past its expiration date in terms of being like hip and current, but are just big sellers from the early 90s. And,
Yes.
you know, I brought this up in an early episode. This podcast is titled Cracked Rear View because, well,
Hootie and
10
the Blowfish.
CDs for a penny was taken. And
Right.
and I wanted to title the podcast after some like huge 90s album. Going down the list, and Cracked Rear View by Hootie and the Blowfish is one of the biggest selling albums of all time. Strangely. But you know what's right next to it? Dookie.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that doesn't surprise me.
On the other side of it, Baby One More Time.
That's right. That's right.
Just shows how freaking bonkers it was for CD sales right now.
What a time in music, though. What a time in music.
Totally.
You know, it's funny. The more I pour through this list, I had the 12 in my head, and now I'm finding all of these that just don't belong on here, but they're still here, and we're going to include them, baby. So we're going to keep going for stuff that isn't from 2000, and I don't care.
Okay. Hey, it's your list.
You know what's on this thing? Which is, again, another all-timer, which was released when I was 3 years old.
Okay.
And that is Graceland from Paul Simon.
Oh, wow.
A tremendous record, which obviously the most popular track. There's "You Can Call Me Al" with the Chevy Chase music video,
Yeah, of
which
course. But you got,
stands on its own. But
Diamonds on the Soles of Her Shoes, another,
oh yeah, Boy in the
popular one.
Bubble, and yeah, oh
Yeah,
god, yeah.
Boy in the Bubble's a good one.
I mean, you talk about no skip records. Graceland's a no skip
Yeah,
record. It's
yeah.
a no skip record. Not sure how many Paul Simon fans there are listening to this, but again, judging from the demo, I'm guessing it's most of them. So it's, but just an all time tremendous record. It's it's Paul Simon. I don't need to provide any more commentary.
No, you summed it up
You
totally.
know. All right, so let's keep going. Um, I hadn't planned on including Dave Matthews twice here, but again, albums that were released years before. It's an album called Crash by Dave Matthews Band, which had a couple of great songs on there. Lie in Our Graves is on that album.
Mm-hmm.
Number 41, So Much to Say. I mean, it's just another really solid Dave Matthews record, which I haven't listened to in a couple of decades. But here we are.
Yeah, and then
So,
that title track, which
mhm,
just such a beautiful song, but lyrically a little bit troublesome. But hey,
just a tad. Just a tad.
the things that get past young ears, right? I
Exactly.
just heard the swirling crescendos of the things that were going on musically on that track, and I was spellbound by it. I remember trying to get it on one of my Maxell tapes of trying to tape off the radio, and
Max
whenever
L.
when
I
the
haven't heard that in forever.
yeah,
Oh my god.
I'm sure that brand got hit hard by the fact that nobody uses tapes anymore.
Right.
But I just remember like when the DJ would come in at the end, it would be like, no, just let Dave finish saying what he's saying so I can have
Right.
this. Uh,
Oh god.
Come on,
Um
adult contemporary DJ on a Cape Cod station. Please cut it out. Just be quiet for a few more seconds.
oh my god.
Anyways,
What are we up to? Is that 9?
we've got 10.
We've got 10. Oh god, I have 4 left on my list. All right, we're going to
Okay.
pare these down, Sean.
Okay.
All right. One I have to include here just because we talked about it before. Possibly the greatest collection of music from this offering in one compact disc
Mm.
is WWF Aggression.
See,
I
you threw me with that because I
I
totally
know.
thought you were circling back to Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, and I was like, I mean, yeah, that's a great album. Like Lost Ones, I'm here for that.
Listen, it's,
Uh,
Lauryn Hill was great, but, you know, she didn't sing Pimpin' Ain't Easy for The Godfather. So, I mean, there are levels to this, Silver. There are levels. So,
you popped me with that one. You did.
I always go for
Oh
the
man.
cheap pop.
Yep. Nice to be here in Corpus Christi.
Thank you, Mick. So we'll go and we'll round it out. I'm gonna give an honorable mention before we round this out.
Yeah, Baker's dozen. Baker's
We'll
dozen.
go with the Baker's dozen. I'm gonna toss in a greatest hits album, if I could speak, from a local up and coming band named Aerosmith,
Mm.
who had a
Mhm.
great compilation album called Big Ones, which was
Yeah.
just a really again it's a no skip because it's a greatest hits, but an awesome CD. Um,
What
you know,
was the what was the because I remember when Big Ones came out. This is probably like 94.
yeah, 94.
They must have had a single on there that they tacked on. And I'm looking this up right now.
I just looked it up as
Yeah.
well. Um, there was a special edition second disc taken from they were all from a live album called A Little South of Sanity, which is also a very good double album.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know that they did actually
No,
have a second single.
I'm looking. I'm surprised. I would have thought Aerosmith in this time, like
Yeah,
at
I
this point,
think that's around when they
Aerosmith was
released
all about
Hank, I
selling
think,
records,
right?
baby. They would have
Oh yeah.
thought they would have had a hot single attached to this, but they appear to have not.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it. Yeah, I think Pink might have been a couple of years after that, actually.
Yeah, Pink was
Mhm.
98 or 97, I think. Yeah, they were still hanging
Um,
around, right?
yeah, they were still, yeah, Pink was fall of '97, so yeah, around the same time. Um, all right. The 13th and final album in the Baker's Dozen was another one of the better CDs that came out in late '99, and again was really important to a young burgeoning guitarist like myself, by Incubus, and it was an LP called Make
Oh,
Yourself, and like really strong lineup of singles coming out of this thing with Drive and Pardon Me and Stellar.
stellar, yeah.
Just a really strong lineup coming out of that thing, and a very good record altogether too. Not like, again, not a no skip, but a very solid record from Incubus.
Yeah, I remember Drive was kind of that was the one that was getting the play on the pop and kind of AC stations.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
At least on the Cape where I was growing up, making that departure from, the hard rock stations. And I kind of think of Incubus, and maybe it was a music industry thing, maybe it was just Incubus, but I brought this up with Coldplay. Like, remember around 2005 when they were about to come out with X and Y, where everyone was saying, "All right, Coldplay is the new U2.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be the new biggest
Mm-hmm.
band in the world." There was a hot minute there where it was like Incubus is going to be the rock band that takes us into the next. And yes, I understand that like the Strokes and all that, New York City garage scene was going on, but Incubus was going to be like the big band
The thing.
that's going to be
Yeah.
the arena rock
Yep.
band for the next decade. And
Yep.
I don't think that really took.
No, and they had, when they came out with Morning View
Oh yeah,
some years later, again, just right
that was
after
I believe that was
9/11.
01. Yeah.
Yeah, it was October of '01.
Like Wish You Were Here was the lead single, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Um, I don't. It definitely didn't catch on as much, and that to me just kind of dampened everything down. They set the bar so high with Make Yourself
Mm.
that there was just no way they were going to match that with any subsequent release. They had, oh, what was the song that they had written? Uh, it was in response to the Bush administration.
Is that
Uh,
Megalomaniac?
Megalomaniac, thank
Yeah.
you. That to me was when their peaks started sinking off.
Mm.
Like they had that one big one, and then it just kind of dipped right after that.
Yeah, I agree.
So and so yeah, then they just another to the list of bands that never lived up to the world beaters.
Yep, but they had it here in '99 with Make Yourself, and
Sure did.
yeah, I mean, looking at this, there are so many different paths that we could have gone down here. There are so many different singles that we haven't addressed. I mean, it was a loaded time in music, and I feel like this goes along the thing that I've been bringing up all episode. Like when you're 17, that stuff just resonates so hard
Mm.
and it sticks with you. And when I took the time to sit down and go through this, I was just like, oh, I remember that, I remember this, I remember that. Oh, that was great. I had that. I wanted that. I downloaded that album on Napster, or you on LimeWire some Friday night when I had nothing better to do. It's just if you were obsessed with music and pop culture at the time, all this stuff, no matter how trite, um, has some sort of implant on your brain even to this day.
And what's more impressive too is that we made it the entire episode without talking about Creed. So that's great.
Was Creed even on here?
I don't believe they were, and I'm guessing that was a very intentional omission.
Interesting,
Yeah.
because they would have come out with that big one was 2000, right, with Higher and all
Yeah.
those.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
so
Oh, they were big, man.
I don't know.
With Arms Wide Open was out, and they were
Hmm.
there. That was the peak of their powers.
Peak Creed.
You know, peak Creed.
I mean, all that talk about the year 2000 in music, and we didn't even discuss Peak Creed, and it's
It,
our privilege to leave it that way.
some would say that Creed has never fallen from their peak, Sean. So they're still there. Scott Stapp is still a revolution. So,
Those that enjoy a scintillating halftime show performance at a Dallas
yes.
Cowboys game with a man with sheets for angel wings that
Yeah,
pops up every Thanksgiving.
He
that
put that
video.
jersey on the walk to the stage. He has no idea what team he was performing for.
Oh man, Dan, you have given me a significant amount of your time here, and I'm appreciative for that time because this was just a free-flowing, fun conversation that I immensely enjoyed.
The feeling is mutual, my man. I enjoyed it a great deal. I'm up for that Saturday 12-hour session whenever you're ready. So, no, the pleasure is mine, man.
Once we can get through the T-ball schedule, I'll give you a call.
Right. We'll have to work that out. We'll plug it into ChatGPT.
Precisely. Dan, thanks again. This was a lot of fun, and yeah, look forward to talking to you down the line.
Sounds good, man. Thank you.
Dan's 12 selections include Eminem, the Marshall Mathers LP, Britney Spears, Baby One More Time, the best of Eric Clapton, Blink-182, Enema of the State, Notorious B.I.G, Born Again, Eminem, the Slim Shady LP, Dave Matthews Band, Under the Table and Dreaming, Green Day, Dookie, Paul Simon, Graceland, Dave Matthews Band, Crash, WWF Aggression, and Incubus, Make Yourself. Music by Pierce. Subscribe to Crack Rearview on your favorite podcast platform or on YouTube. You can find Crack Rearview Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. I'm Sean Sylver.